Welcome back to Fleshing It Out with Samantha Spittle. This month, we are tackling the shame trigger of aging. And when it comes to aging, there is so much to unpack. We have our own personal stuff that we are working on. When you're in that sandwich generation where you have aging parents and you're also raising kids, it really doubles down on all the stuff you're dealing with. And so today's guest, Heather Suri, talks about kind of the practical side of aging and helping our parents as they age. So if you're in that season of life where you're starting to help your parents, and it's easy to feel like the roles get reversed, that you're suddenly wanting to care for your parents, but they are still your parents. They are still older. There's still all of these dynamics. And so Heather shares some really practical tips that address that tension that we feel, both as, children of aging parents and from the aging parent standpoint. And so I feel like this is something that, usually doesn't get talked about, but it's helpful to talk about it now before you're in a crisis mode. So join Heather and I as we flesh it out. Don't forget to check out our VIPs, our valuable, insightful partners. You can find them at www.samanthaspittle.com/VIPs. You'll find people that can help you with additional resources and services to keep fleshing it out beyond the podcast.
This work for me, very personal. I mean, I'm a member of the sandwich generation too. I've got kids from 9 to 22. I've got a grandmother with dementia and memory care. I've got parents with chronic illnesses. And they're actually primary caregivers for my uncle, who's 65 with an intellectual disability. So it's I'm smack middle in the middle of it. And I love the work. I love working with other daughters and sons, but I think, especially daughters, we see a lot of daughters kind of come into this caregiving type of role. Whether it's primary caregiving, they're the ones actually maybe living with parents or visiting their parents or making decisions for their parents or wishing their parents would make other decisions, or secondary caregivers where we have, the daughters who are maybe out of state and trying to support, a well spouse taking care of someone with a chronic illness. And that whole dynamic is no less stressful.
Oh, yeah. And yeah. Other challenges. You brought up so many, I feel like, great examples of what people struggle with, and like you said, a lot of times the burden does seem to fall a lot on the daughters, but I know that there's lots of sons and other people that just, of course, are wanting to care for their parents. But as we kind of are unpacking the shame triggers this season, one thing that I think this sandwich generation, and to clarify the sandwich generation, right? It's where you're kind of in that phase of life where you're raising your kids. You're kind of in that parent of, and I don't even say littles because, our kids need our care all the way through, and so it's raising the kids up to the aging parents, and helping them. And I think that, I was looking at the other shame triggers we've talked about this season, and so many are, we work on our own stuff and things like that. And the interesting thing of this sandwich generation when it comes to this aging and why I kind of was identifying some shame with that is because you have your own family of origin. We talked about that last month with parenting. We talked about kind of how much our family of origin affects how we pay our bills, raise our kids, deal with our spouse. And so then you add in this where, how did your parents take care of their parents? You might be wanting to do it differently. And then you just all have our own, mental health stuff that we deal with and how we kind of default to old patterns. And it's like, oh my gosh, this just got super confusing because when you're just living your own life, you could just do your own thing. And now you add on this whole other phase. So before we jump into all that, I would love to have you introduce yourself and we can kind of start unraveling this.
Sure. Well, my name is Heather Suri, and I own a care management practice called Pathways in Aging. I am a nurse by training for about almost 25 years now. And for those of you who don't know what care management is, a lot of people don't. Care management is care coordination, it's crisis intervention, it's guidance and consultation. We really help families build teams, navigate problems, come up with solutions that meet their unique needs. Our specialty, of course, is working with the aging community, but we actually work with people across the lifespan who are facing different kinds of medical or psychiatric challenges.
Yeah.
So I live here in Loudoun County, got 4 kids, 2 cats, very, very busy life. I say go to work to relax.
Yeah. So you have it all covered, all the different phases and spans of life. And I imagine, I think when we have stuff that touches us personally and we see the need, it helps us, I think that's what fuels our passion for doing things. And it sounds like, you having so many different areas of life kind of touched by all this, that it's a natural fit, right? To kind of dive in there.
It is. And, I've worked in a lot of different areas of nursing. I've certified hospice and palliative care nurse. I've worked in long-term care facilities. I've been a director of nursing for a home care agency. And this work just allows me to not stay in my lane, to really use all of that experience to, really practice the purest sense of person-centered care, where I can really come up with unique solutions, because every family is different and there are so many right ways to do things.
Yeah.
Especially we get, as adult children of aging parents, we get kind of buried under this pressure of doing the right thing. What is the right way to do things? And the answer is there are so many right ways to do things. So I like helping families find the right way for them.
Yeah, that's such a perfect segue from last month. It was, we talked all about parenting, and it's parenting the kids. And we talked all about the right way, and that there is no right way. There's lots of ways. It's what's right for you. And seeing my own parents, help their parents, and kind of, we were long distance, they're out they were in the Midwest. We were military, and we spent a lot of those years when they were older on the East Coast. And so there were so many factors involved into caring for them. And you said it earlier, if your parents are making decisions, are they making the decisions you agree with? It's almost like it's that flip-flop of parenting youngers, and then suddenly you kind of reverse roles with your parents and it starts to change.
Yeah, we see that sometimes, but the other lens I see that through is that older adults in general tend to have a different calculation of personal risk. So when, you have lived all of these decades and you faced these different hardships and you've gone through them and you're in, kind of the closing chapters of your life, your idea of what is risky, of what is safe, how much risk you're comfortable with is really kind of different. Now, when we're teenagers, our perception of risk is different too. So, those things change over the lifespan. But a lot of times I see adult kids just wish their parents would go into assisted living. They're just, they want something to feel like it's in a controlled environment. They're worried somebody's going to fall and somebody's not taking their medication. And so balancing that, that idea of, what is safe and what is somebody's autonomy and choice, and how to kind of honor both of them is really kind of an interesting and creative work, how to find those intersections between the kids and their aging parents to map that pathway forward.
That is a huge thing you just said. I feel like it's something we could quickly move on from. But once again, this is like very parallel to last month, where it's the autonomy, it's keeping the autonomy. And I think it's so natural for us. We're controlling our kids, but when you raise your kids, it's as they get older, you have them, they need more freedom. And it's funny how we need to be so mindful of our own, just our instinct to want to protect them, because now we're seeing them as older and want to protect them, but needing to remember that they are their own individual person and they've lived a long life. So that different assessment of risk is very interesting. So I always joke that whenever you're in a role where you have to deal with multiple people, it's like you're a therapist, but you're not a therapist. This is not therapy at all. And I'm not, but I always joke like photographers at weddings, like they have to manage all the different people. And I feel like that's probably very similar with you with all the roles you do. So kind of putting on your helping hat with people so that, we can start thinking of these things maybe before we're in crisis.
Right. A couple of things come to mind with what you just said. One, talking about putting on your helper hat or being the in air quotes therapist. One of the roles of a therapist is not to tell you what to do. Mm-hmm. It is to help you find the answers that are already inside yourself by asking the right questions. And then being willing to listen to those answers and sit with them, even if they're uncomfortable. So I think that's part of it. Adult kids, unless you're in a situation where you are a guardian or you have a loved one with very advanced dementia, you are not responsible for your parents and all of their choices. People who are, have capacity, okay, so don't have dementia to the point of incapacity, mm-hmm. have the right to make decisions we don't agree with. The other piece that I see quite often is when aging parents didn't plan well for their aging. Maybe they are not financially prepared to get the care that they need. And we have adult kids who maybe are in a different financial situation. And I have daughters, ready to cash in their 401ks to pay for assisted living. Don't do that. You can't do that. So that's where some of this boundary stuff comes in around how can you find some peace with the situation as it is, the decisions that your parents made, and help guide them through the process of next steps based on what their resources are, whether it's personal resources, financial resources, how they perceive risk. It's messy and it's hard.
It is. And you said that magic word, boundaries. And I'm like, okay, we got to dig in there, because right away when you started talking about, if the parents don't prepare and the daughter's like ready to cash it in, there's so much where someone else's choices, how they affect us. And it's one of those, when you're not in the situation, it's easy to say, hey, it's their choice, their consequence. But once again, this is where it gets really messy with family dynamics and your family of origin and the guilt and the shame that gets wrapped in it all. So what does boundaries look like, if you're in that sandwich generation with those aging parents?
I think that what I talk to adult kids about a lot is you get to define your own boundaries. So what my boundaries look like might not look like what your boundaries are, but you have to decide what is right for you and not feel guilty about protecting your energy and keeping your boundaries, because it's, we're back to that whole, put your own oxygen mask on first before you help the person next to you. If you are not physically, emotionally, mentally healthy, it's going to be really difficult for you to help care for your parents, help care for your kids, keep your job, all of those things that, that we're constantly juggling. So, depending on the situation, the way you implement your boundaries might be different. It might be making a decision about finding solutions to manage your parents' care within their own financial resources. It might be allowing yourself some distance if there were some difficult relationships. I work with a lot of families where maybe there were relationships with parents that maybe even bordered on emotionally abusive. And then it gets really difficult when you're in a situation where now you have to care for your parents, and there's all of that unresolved stuff that can be really triggering. So it's okay to put those boundaries up. I get questions from adult kids a lot. How often should I visit? My parent in assisted living, and they go, and the parent is not kind, not nice. Maybe there's some dementia involved. Maybe there's not. You don't have to go every day and absorb the abuse. You don't have to expose yourself to that. So you decide for your boundaries, and maybe it's once a week and you go for 10 minutes and it gets ugly, then you give yourself permission to leave. So it's about defining what's right for you, and then respecting those boundaries that you set for yourself, and honoring them, and knowing you're entitled to them.
Yeah. Oh man, that's so huge. I think sometimes we just need to hear this, when you know the right thing, boundaries, you're supposed to, but I think just hearing so often from someone that, it's okay to do what is best for you, because no one knows your situation. Like you said, you touched upon if there's possible abuse in a family. And I mean, it's easy for people from the outside to criticize the choices you make, but they don't know, the situation you're in.
And building a team, I think, you'd want to talk about a tip, figuring out who that team is that's going to help, with your parents' care. It doesn't have to all be on you. It might be bringing in a home health team through the Medicare benefit. It might be connecting with the primary care provider and letting them know that you need some help. It might be through county services, the area agency on aging, senior center. There's adult day health programming. That's something that we do a lot of trying to help families build these teams so that there is a sustainable care system, and the adult child doesn't have to shoulder all of it, because it's not your job to shoulder all of it. And we do that. Sandwich generation, we make everything our job.
Yeah.
It's exhausting.
Yeah. What are some of the things, I guess, the biggest struggles you see from people that come to see you? And I would love for you to take this question in any direction, which is whether it's, the sandwich generation coming, whether it's who you care for, just kind of the, favorite question I used to ask early on in the podcast was like, basically, what do you just want people to know about what you're passionate about or about what you do? Kind of like the shout from the rooftop.
Yeah.
I wish people knew that.
Oh gosh, there's so much. I wish everybody knew what Medicare does and doesn't cover. That's something, it's kind of shocking, how much we don't understand about Medicare. But, and Medicare does not provide home care.
Yeah.
That hourly home care doesn't cover it. So it doesn't cover assisted living. I still get questions about that. But I think some of the things that families come to me most often about, that they kind of think that they're alone in. We talked a little bit earlier about your story about feeling like they're facing something that no one else has faced. It could be driving. Could be that an aging parent, you're not sure if they're safe to drive, and the aging parent is not going to give away the keys willingly. And, how do you figure out the right thing to do? And then what are the tactical steps that you take? Someone who is having some changes in cognition, and we're not sure if it's dementia or not. And maybe the aging parent doesn't want to talk to their doctor about it, or they don't want to see a neurologist because they're embarrassed and they're feeling ashamed. And they don't want to hear what they think the answer is going to be. So how do you navigate that when you know there's a problem, but your loved one won't get help. So that's a situation. Understanding the timeline of when to make a move. So do you support somebody aging in place? Do they go to assisted living? When do you make those changes and those decisions? So it's a lot of these things that are not clear cut, don't have black and white answers, and the answers to these questions really depend on the individual situations in the family. And it's a lot of talking and listening and understanding to find those paths forward.
Yeah. Do you have recommendations? You were talking about what happens when you notice the changes in your parent and they don't want to bring it up. And it's funny because, depending on what your family dynamics are, I just feel like I kind of fall back into that teenage mode. I can see that with my own, my mom and I, when we talk, it's like, I give lots of grace and patience over here to these people. But when I talk to my mom, it's like falling back into that teenage Sam role, And so do you have tips on kind of approaching those conversations?
Yeah. And sometimes the kids are not the best messengers because, you've already got your backup. You're in the teenager mode. And when you open your mouth, they hear an 8-year-old. And so it just, sometimes that doesn't work. So, what I find is trying to get the doctor involved, tipping off the doctor so that the doctor asks the right questions and creates the right environment to help your loved one feel safe enough to answer honestly. Sometimes if they know that there's a problem, they can ask some questions that can help guide that conversation. Sometimes sometimes we can't even get them to go to the doctor. So maybe it's a physical therapist, maybe it's a hairdresser. Sometimes it's, again, pulling that safety net out, maybe it's a neighbor, it's somebody who can ask some questions and create that safe space to, explore options. Certainly care managers, we do a lot of that, kind of find that way to build rapport and trust. Sometimes they need to hear it from somebody who is a professional. And again, it doesn't have to be a care manager. But there's often a lot of other professionals that are involved. And I'm a big believer in the team approach because it just doesn't, it can get adversarial really quick.
Exactly.
And if you're the kid, even if you're the adult kid, your parents know how to shut it down. They've got decades of experience.
Yeah. That's the thing, that these family dynamics, they don't suddenly go away. You think, that it's just, we're going to move these pieces around, but it's like we all are our own individual people. And so, and then you have all those dynamics that, like you said, they know how to shut it down. And I love when you said, we think, we turn into our teenage selves, into them, we're our 8-year-old selves. It's so having that team approach, I think, is super important to kind of help carry that load and other perspectives and whatnot too. So,
and if you have siblings that are also involved, that's another thing I see sometimes are frustrations and resentment because one sibling is kind of doing more of the heavy lifting than the other siblings are. And, I talk with adult kids about this all the time because it's never going to be equal, whatever that word means. Every one member of the family has their own mental, emotional, physical bandwidth. Again, everybody has their individual boundaries that they get to define for themselves. And so we just have to, be able to ask for help. Sometimes we have someone doing all the heavy lifting because they're a control freak and they do it and they don't ask for help. So being able to articulate what you need, being able to tap into the gifts of the other family members so that, people are doing what they feel like they can do. But that's another really tricky one.
Well, you're touching on all the things that I feel like, I hear what I talk about a lot. And it's basically so much of life is unpacking our own stuff and getting to the root of our own stuff. When we deny and we try to shove all this stuff down, there's the health crisis or some sort of crisis later in life, I'm like, this is when the lid is ripped off, or Pandora's box feels like it's opened, where all this stuff that you just shoved down for years and years and years. And then suddenly this is the stage of life, it seems like, where there's probably going to be a lot of all that unresolved stuff comes bubbling up.
I think so. But, our generation and, mine, I'm a Gen Xer. We've had a lot of therapy in this generation. And I think we need to do things differently and prepare our kids differently for our aging. I'm a nurse and I do this care management for a living. So I have these conversations with my kids a lot because I see what it looks like when people don't. But it's important to have those hard conversations, advanced care planning, what kind of care you want, what you don't want, what is most important to you. These are things that we can do to help prepare our kids because aging isn't inevitable and it's going to happen to all of us. And I think that, for whatever reason, the way society has been structured, we weren't prepared. Our generation was really not prepared. And people are living longer. We have all of this medical technology, all of the advancements that we're seeing. Older adults live longer, but not necessarily healthier. Yeah. So that phase of kind of frailty is much longer. Yeah. And that makes things really challenging too. So having those conversations with our own kids about what we want and what quality of life means to us will help us and it will help them.
Yeah, that's something that I feel like, I believe I said this before we started recording with my own parents. My grandmother lived till 98. And so I saw my mom, care for her and do it long distance and needing to travel a lot. And they also, they helped out with my dad's parents, but I was, a young teenager when they went through all of that. And so I was, of course, in the throes of being a probably 15-year-old. And it was one of those things that as I got older and I had kids and I just saw the stress on my mom and everything, we had a lot more conversations about it. And I think it's something and we talked about what it was like when my dad's parents were, when they were older and got sick and whatnot. And it's all this stuff that I remember thinking, I had no clue that, just this whole idea of the sandwich generation. I just had no clue my mom was going and my dad were going through any of that stuff. Because of course I was just living my life. And I just remember feeling grateful that I was able to have that perspective shift. And we were able to, have some conversations of, how to make some different choices that choices that she would want to make or we would make and whatnot, because I realized it's just, if we just don't talk about it, it's kind of, you just keep on keeping on. You do it the way the previous generation did it. And I think that's a big thing too, is people are changing, where they live and how they travel and whatnot, not being tied to the same place. And like you said, living longer and all the challenges it presents. So as we kind of wrap up, what are some of the things that, I know that working with someone like you, especially if you're in crisis mode, it's to pull in someone to kind of help make sense of this all. So of course, if someone's in crisis mode, that's a great solution. If you're not in crisis mode and you're in this sandwich generation, what are some things you can kind of start talking about with your parents to kind of prepare?
Mm-hmm. So, let's start with the basics first. Legal paperwork. If are there powers of attorney in place? If not, let's get those done. Let's get it done now when everybody's calm and everybody is healthy, and make sure that the designated person for healthcare decisions that that paperwork is signed and done. I have so many families who had it drawn up and it never got signed, or they did it 25 years ago and didn't look at it, and it's now out of date. So good to have that. Adult kids should have an electronic copy of it, so that if you need to zip it over to a hospital, especially if you live out of state, there's nothing worse than needing to prove to the hospital that you're the power of attorney and then having to physically go to your parents' home and search through a file cabinet to try to find that piece of paper. Yeah. So do that when things are calm. The other thing that I would recommend that can be a barrier is get a joint account. Get your name as a signer on with one of your parents. It can be really difficult if you need to access funds for care. So maybe you need to bring in home care. Maybe somebody needs to go to assisted living. Something happened quickly, to get all of the documentation, the letters from the doctor to take to the bank with your power of attorney. And even then, sometimes there can be delays. So the fastest thing to do is to be a signer on your parents' account. And once you're a signer on there, you can forget about it. You don't have to worry about it. But when it's needed, it can just, be such a stress reliever. And then advanced care planning. Have the conversations with your parents about what kind of care they want if there is an emergency. Talking about aggressive interventions, talking about intubation, talking about tube feeding, those types of things. These aren't decisions that we want to have to make in a crisis. We want to have had those conversations early and often, so that when adult children are in the situation where those decisions are made, they are carrying out their parents' wishes, not making the decision for them. There is a huge difference between the two. And it's already an emotionally loaded, difficult situation, but it is so much easier to carry out somebody's wishes than it is to make a decision for them.
Yeah. You do the work for your kids. If you're in that situation, you figure out what your wishes are, and you write it all down and you get it all put together. So because we can't, of course, make our parents do that. If you're kind of in that sandwich generation and you're helping, you can't make them do that. But of course we could do that for our kids. And that's something that, I'm grateful that my parents have done, because I would not have thought to ask many of these things. And, and I know even when they talk to me about it, I'm kind of in that place where I'm like, la, 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 like, I don't want to think about that. But it's
you can get into not denial like really, really quickly. Yeah. And it's self-protective. I understand it. This is, and again, this comes back to just how our society handles aging, and nobody wants to get old. There's shame attached to aging. There's, talking about guilt too. And we're so attached to our productivity about what we do in American culture. That's the first thing we ask people. What do you do? What do you do? It defines us. And so when we age and we're not able to do, our identity can be fractured. And it's, so yes, having these conversations with family early and often can make this a lot less painful.
Yeah. And thanks for commenting on that. I think that's such a big reason why it's so hard to talk about, because we don't want to think about all those feelings that get brought up with that. But, it's worth it. I mean, just like when we talk about therapy and doing all the work of our growth and healing, it's, there's a lot of stuff that I think there's opportunity too for relationships and whatnot to have healing and repair too, is if we kind of can start these conversations when it's not in a crisis mode, maybe there could be some opportunities too for families to come together, and not have it be areas of stress to be pulled apart either. So, well, any closing thoughts, Heather, for helping kind of bridge this gap as you do professionally, but everyone, no matter pretty much where you're at in life, it is going to be part of your life.
Yeah. I mean, just, again, a message to the adult kids out there, who are doing this. It's hard. You're doing the best you can, and that's enough. And it's okay to not do it all yourself. It's okay to get some help.
Thank you for that encouragement. And I think sometimes we all just need to know that doing our best is always enough, and it's going to look different from each person. So I appreciate your tips, your insight. And how can people get in touch with you, Heather?
So my website is pathwaysinaging.com. On there, you'll find my phone number. You can book a consultation online. You can reach me by email. I work with families all over the country, of course, in person here in Northern Virginia, but virtually from everywhere else. So I'd love to get to know you and get to know your family situation and see if I can offer you some help.
Awesome. And I would love to have you clarify too, because we didn't totally touch upon it. We kind of jumped into kind of helping start unraveling this whole sandwich generation. What exactly do you do? So how can you help families specifically?
Sure. So we help families really in 4 ways. One, through assessment and planning. So for folks who aren't in crisis, we can come out to the home and we look at the medical and the cognitive and the nutrition, and we look at the legal and the financial. We really look at every aspect of aging and help families make a plan and give them some specific resources that will help. We also help families who are in crisis. So if somebody is in the hospital, if you've ever had an elder loved one in the hospital, you know that the day they're admitted, they're already planning the discharge. And then you get handed a list, pick a nursing home for rehab. It all happens really fast. We can help make sure that your loved one gets into the best place available. We know who's good at what. We can help make that, give you the information you need to really make informed decisions during that discharge plan. We're also available for consultation. I do 1-hour consultations virtually at a discounted rate just to tackle these. What about the driving? What do we do about a power of attorney situation? Or what do we do about a possible dementia diagnosis? So we work with families that way as well.
That's great. Thank you so much. I know that especially in crisis, it's nice to have the help before crisis, which is why I love getting to meet people like you and share your insight, because I think that just can make a huge difference, but especially, or I should say, and especially though, in crisis.
Yeah. And I've got a great team of nurses and social workers all over Northern Virginia. So we're here, we're ready.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Heather. I appreciate your time and insight. And I know that you're helping lots of families. And so I appreciate you taking the time today to chat.
All right. Thank you so much, Samantha, for having me on.
Thanks for listening to Flushing It Out with Samantha Spittle, where we explore growth and healing through vulnerable conversation. Our hope is that you feel seen and find tools for growing resiliency and tackling your own growth and healing. Be sure to subscribe and check out the VIPs and other resources at samanthaspittle.com. This has been a Spitfire production.
That was the greatest thing I've ever heard.